Welcome dosto to your own favorite military history channel. Today, we bring you something truly special. The last chapter of the book History of Operations 1947-48 War. Yes, dosto, this is the final chapter, and we are committed to providing you with the best study material absolutely free. So before we begin, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to support our mission of spreading knowledge. Now, let's dive into the crucial details of Chapter 19, a chapter that brings us to the final moments of this historic conflict. What were the last moves of the Indian Army? How did the war shape the future of the subcontinent? All this and more, coming up. So buckle up, as we decode history like never before. Today we are diving into Chapter 19, Part 1, Conclusion and Review. The final moments of the 1947-48 war and the ceasefire agreement that followed. Now, this is where things get really interesting. The UN Security Council stepped in on 17 January 1948, trying to calm things down between India and Pakistan. They said, "Bas karo," no more fighting, and asked both countries to avoid actions that could make the situation worse. But guess what? Talks went on for months. Resolutions were passed, debates happened, but neither side was ready to back down easily. This was the first big international intervention in the Kashmir conflict, and let me tell you, this pattern would repeat many times in the future. The world watched as India and Pakistan stood their ground, making it clear that this issue was far from over. So what happened next? Did the ceasefire hold? Did it really solve anything? Stay tuned, because the real game was just beginning. But what were India and Pakistan actually fighting for at the negotiation table? Let's break it down. India's stance. India made its position crystal clear, first and foremost. Pakistan had to stop supporting the raiders. No more backing these armed groups, no more cross-border interference. If there was to be peace, Pakistan needed to withdraw all hostile elements and let normal life resume in Jammu and Kashmir. And most importantly, India firmly stood by the legality of Jammu and Kashmir's accession. The state had legally joined India, and that meant one thing: it was India's duty to defend it against any external aggression. There were no ifs or buts. Kashmir was India's, and defending it was non-negotiable. So how did Pakistan respond? Did they agree to India's demands? Or was the battle for Kashmir about to take another turn? Stay tuned, because the tension was just getting started. But dosto, Pakistan had a completely different story to tell. While India stood firm, Pakistan flat out denied any involvement with the raiders. "Hamara to koi lena dena nahi hai," they claimed. According to them, they had nothing to do with the armed groups that stormed into Jammu and Kashmir. And then came their biggest argument. The accession itself was disputed. Pakistan insisted that J and K's decision to join India was not final, and that the people of Kashmir should get to decide their own future. Their solution? A unsupervised plebiscite. Pakistan pushed for a vote, but with one condition: before any plebiscite could happen, there had to be an impartial interim administration in Kashmir. In simple words, they wanted the existing leadership out before any voting could take place. So, we now had two completely opposing positions. India said, "Kashmir is ours," and that's final, while Pakistan kept demanding a plebiscite. The question was, who would the UN side with? Would this deadlock lead to a real ceasefire? Or was another storm brewing? Stay tuned, because the next move was about to change history. And just when you thought this was only between India and Pakistan, enter the big global players. Western powers, especially the USA and UK, jumped in. But guess what? Their stance made things even more complicated. Why? Because this was the start of the Cold War, and global politics was all about picking sides. Instead of focusing on Pakistani aggression, these Western powers largely backed Pakistan's demand for a plebiscite. India kept saying, "पहले पाकिस्तान अपनी हद बंद करे, raiders वापस भेजे, तब बात आगे बढ़ेगी." But the West? They conveniently ignored this and pushed the plebiscite agenda instead. So, India now had a new challenge. Not just dealing with Pakistan on the battlefield, but also fighting diplomatic battles on the world stage. Would India's voice be heard? Or would international politics tilt the game in Pakistan's favor? The stakes were higher than ever, and the future of Kashmir hung in the balance. And dosto, just when things were heating up, the United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan, UNCIP, stepped in. Now, Pakistan had been denying its involvement all along, right? हमारा तो कोई हाथ ही नहीं है. But then, boom, their own foreign minister slipped up and admitted that since May 1948, Pakistan had actually deployed 3 regular brigades in Kashmir. This was huge. India had been saying it all along. Pakistan was not just supporting the raiders, they were directly involved. You'd think this revelation would settle the debate, right? But United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan had other plans. Instead of taking firm action against Pakistan, they simply told both sides to exercise restraint. Matlab? Even after clear proof of Pakistan's involvement, the UN still wasn't ready to call them out. So, India was left thinking, ये क्या हो रहा है? सबूत दीन के बाद भी दुनिया हमारी बातें सनी को तैयार नहीं है. The diplomatic game was getting murkier, and India knew that trusting the international system wouldn't be enough. Dosto, after Pakistan's own admission of sending troops into Kashmir, United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan findings completely validated India's claims. Pakistan wasn't just supporting the raiders, they were actively sending their military into Indian territory. This was a clear violation of international law. No debate, no confusion, black and white proof. So what did the United Nations do next? Did they finally hold Pakistan accountable? Nope. United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan response remained muted. Instead of calling out Pakistan's aggression and taking strong action, they simply repeated their old line. Bas dono side shant raho. Imagine this, India had proof. International laws were on its side, yet the world powers still weren't ready to act. Why? Because global politics always favors convenience over justice. Dosto, with all the debates, accusations, and international drama going on, the United Nations finally decided, bas, ek solution nikala jaye. And that's when we got the 13th August 1948 resolution. With the conflict dragging on, the UN stepped in with a 3-point resolution to de-escalate the situation. Ceasefire. Both India and Pakistan would halt military operations. Truce agreement. Pakistan had to withdraw its forces, while India would maintain security. Consultations for a plebiscite. A vote could happen under certain conditions. Now, here's the game changer. This resolution actually acknowledged Pakistan's aggression and recognized India's sovereignty over the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir. A diplomatic win for India. India accepted the resolution after being assured of its sovereignty and the right to defend J&K. Pakistan neither fully accepted nor rejected it, making excuses about tribal withdrawals and the future of the so-called Azad Kashmir government. 1st December 1948 Supplementary Resolution. Since tensions were still high, the UN introduced another resolution to fine-tune the ceasefire terms and address the remaining concerns of both nations. India accepted the proposals. Pakistan, under intense military and political pressure, reluctantly agreed. Dosto, after months of fierce battles and diplomatic twists, the war finally reached its climax. But before the guns fell silent, India had already secured major victories, both on the battlefield and politically. India's final push, a turning point. November 1948, Siege of Poonch lifted. After holding off Pakistani forces for months, Indian troops broke the siege and secured Poonch, marking a major strategic win. Jojila Kargil recaptured. Pakistan thought the icy mountains of Jojila, Dras, and Kargil were untouchable. But India shocked the world by deploying tanks at high altitudes. This operation crushed Pakistan's hold on the region. September 1948, Hyderabad police action. Meanwhile, the Indian Army successfully integrated Hyderabad into India. With this threat neutralized, More Indian forces could now be sent to J&K, strengthening India's position even further. Pakistan's crisis, the breaking point. Jinnah's death, September 1948. The man who had led Pakistan's creation was gone, leaving behind political instability and leadership struggles. Economic and military struggles. Pakistan was running out of resources, weapons, and international support. A prolonged war was no longer an option. Ceasefire and the birth of the CFL. With India dominating the battlefield and Pakistan struggling politically, a ceasefire was finally agreed upon. And at exactly 11:59 p.m. on 1st January 1949, the war officially ended. But dosto, the story didn't end there. Now came the next big challenge, marking the Ceasefire Line, CFL. July 18th to 27th, 1949, Karachi Agreement. Both sides met in Karachi under UN supervision to officially demarcate the ceasefire line. This line would remain in place until the 1971 war, after which it was redefined as the Line of Control, LOC. So, dosto, the war had ended. But the Kashmir conflict was far from over. The ceasefire line was drawn, and both sides had put down their weapons. But not everyone was happy about it. Was the ceasefire a mistake? The great debate begins. While some saw the ceasefire as a diplomatic success, many believed India had stopped too soon. Critics argued that this was a missed opportunity. India had Pakistan on the back foot, and just a few more weeks of military action could have liberated all of Jammu and Kashmir. Bas thoda aur ruk jate, to pura Kashmir hamare paas hota, they said. And dosto, this led to one of the biggest debates in Indian military history. Was the ceasefire an incomplete victory? The harsh reality. By agreeing to the ceasefire, India lost the chance to deliver a decisive military knockout. Instead of fully reclaiming J&K, India had to settle for a divided Kashmir, with Pakistan still occupying a significant part of the territory, now called Pakistan-occupied Kashmir or POK. The war had ended, but the Kashmir conflict had not. And because of the ceasefire, future wars in 1965, 1971, and 1999 became inevitable. Dosto, while the critics argued that India should have pushed forward, there was another side to the story, the harsh operational realities on the ground. Why the ceasefire made sense? 1. Indian forces were overstretched. After months of intense combat, Indian troops needed rest and reorganization. Logistical pauses were crucial to maintain momentum. War isn't just about courage, it's about strategy. 2. Troop strength disadvantage. Pakistan had 63 battalions, while India had 50 regular battalions plus 14 militia battalions. A full-scale push into enemy-held areas meant taking massive risks. 3. Fragile supply lines. India's entire supply chain depended on a single vulnerable route, the Banihal Pass. One disruption, and Indian forces would be left stranded. No army fights without food, ammunition, and reinforcements. 4. Risk of full-scale war. If India had launched an all-out assault, Pakistan could have escalated the war beyond Kashmir, potentially drawing in other countries. The world was watching, and India had to tread carefully. 5. Nehru's diplomatic gamble. Ultimately, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru believed in diplomacy. He saw the ceasefire as a step toward a long-term resolution, hoping the world would recognize India's rightful claim over J&K. Final thoughts. A war that never truly ended. So, dosto, was the ceasefire a wise decision or a missed opportunity? The reality is, while it ended open warfare, it didn't bring lasting peace. The Kashmir conflict continued in 1965, 1971, and even in 1999 during the Kargil War. And even today, the echoes of that decision shape India's security policies and geopolitical strategies. Dosto, with this, we wrap up the final chapter of this incredible journey through the 1947 to 48 war. But remember, history is best understood when seen as a complete picture. So, If you haven't already, make sure to watch all the videos in sequence to truly grasp the strategy, battles, and decisions that shaped the Kashmir conflict. We know you all have a lot of questions, and that's why we're launching a special Q&A series soon. We'll take your most asked questions and break them down in detail. So, if you haven't subscribed yet, abhi kar lo. Follow our channel, hit the bell icon, and don't forget to like, share, and support independent military history content. Jai Hind.